work. It's just
My past always trying to pull me back, but the growth inside makes me stronger than it. My past don't make me weaker, it makes me stronger, pushes me forward. Just look at the miles I've run, won't let them come undone. I work too hard, I'll keep on walking, keep on fighting, 'cause I'm gonna win. No more questions, no more doubts. I know what I gotta do. I won't let nothing hold me down. The prize is what I'm headed to. That's why I ain't looking back. Look good, look good. I ain't going back. Look good.
Yo, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Kingdom Podcast. It's me, Brother Brady, coming to you guys once again on a special live broadcast of the podcast. Movie Secret, we pre-record the other ones. But tonight, we are live from living rooms across our country. And we really wanted to have a really special conversation tonight. In the past, we've had conversations that have just church stuff and just different things, but we really wanted to get to some a really big social situation going on right now that we felt the need to address and speak on as to be a benefit to all of you guys, just to hear some voices and allow the conversation to go on that can hopefully benefit all of us in this time that we're going through. But as you see, we got some great people, some of our OGs in the iRock group. Everyone knows Pastor Shaun, our YYA director. But I had to go back to some of the starters of iRock. You guys have been rocking with us for years. You know these two faces more than anybody else. I am just a young pup in the iRock game, but these two have been part of the foundation of it. Starting off with the master major sergeant. I've seen Jelani over the years be just a master of worship, not a minister of worship, a master of worship. The way he has taken up iRock from a worship standpoint has been absolutely amazing. I can't wait to see how he goes up this year in a couple months in Louisville. But he's also coming on to give a really good perspective from his line of work as a sergeant in the Detroit Police Department. So we're really interested in having our good brother Jelani Jones on. I got to see you, man.
Bless you, man. I'll send you a check in the mail for that intro.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I had to start off with you because I got to give the proper final intro to the one and only Miss Marlena. Ain't no other admin out there. I don't care if it's for iRock, anybody else. This is the one who makes the things happen. We get to be the faces out front under the lights, but we don't get those lights on. It's not for Marlena's work at the very beginning. She served as my mentor as I started coming into iRock work. Just her work example has been great. And tonight, she's going to give us such a good perspective from her position as a district court judge in Detroit as well. So, everyone, clap your virtual hands for Miss Marlena Taylor.
Hello. Thank you. I need all the accolades that come with it. Thank you so much.
Judge,
honor to God.
Taylor.
In the comments, Your Honor. I need to have the gavels in the comments. Put the gavels in the comments. Get the gavels in the sirens. Need all the emojis in the comments. But guys, I'm glad to have you on with us tonight. And I want to get straight into the conversation because it's one that we continue to have. It's one that every couple months we're talking about this thing once again. And this conversation is going to be a little bit different because the look is a little bit different. Tonight, guys, I want to address the situation of our brother Tyre Nichols. Just very quick background for those who may not know about the situation. Last month in January, about 30 days now, um, in Memphis, Tennessee, five officers, and who I do want to address as Black officers, um, during a traffic stop of Tyre Nichols, ended the stop with a beating that ultimately led to the death of Tyre Nichols afterwards. It's something that we've heard so many times. We've gone through it with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Flender Castile. It's just we have so many different names of situations where there has been a negative interaction between police and a citizen. And for us, it's more viewed as police against an unarmed Black male. And the reason why I want to acknowledge this as different because in this situation, the officers are five Black men as well. And we're so used to the idea of white police officers being the ones who uh, had the misconduct against us, but these were us. These were our people from our community um, representing the police and being in the same situation that we have fought against for so many years. And with our conversation tonight, I just really want to start off and get some of your just personal feelings on the Tyre Nichols situation. So, John, I want to start off with you, just personally, as Jelani Jones. How do you feel, or how did this make you feel when you very first heard about the situation?
Initially, I was angry and embarrassed. Angry and embarrassed. I pride myself that the 23 years to lead and to serve the city of Detroit with integrity and character, and it just didn't make sense what I saw. And I will say this: the first time I've ever seen anything this blatant and with so much poor tactics, poor verbal skills or the lack thereof, the procedure, demeanor, failure to supervise as a supervisor. I saw all of that at once, and it angered me. Naturally, I think I see things from a different lens than most people, being in law enforcement. And I think I spend a lot of time trying to explain my view to kind of give a different perspective. And you know, they say the thin blue line, but sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. A lot of times you see the aftermath once the viewpoint is given to society, but we didn't see what happened before to get to the end. But in this instance, it was egregious, and I was angered.
Yeah, that's good to hear because I think so often, especially for someone in your position, um, we don't see the human side of you. I imagine that a lot of times when officers are asked about other officer misconduct situations, they want to know the officer perspective. But this is the person,
Absolutely.
and it's always warranted to hear you as a person, as an individual, and how these things make you feel personally.
Right.
So, Marlene, I want to ask you next. How did it feel for you hearing the situation?
Oh, um, well, first of all, I want to give my condolences to the Nichols family and friends. When I initially heard it, my first thought was like, "Oh my gosh, here we go again. When is this gonna stop?" Like as a human, as a Black woman, I'm thinking like, really again? Like, when are we going to learn the lessons and not repeat the same behavior over and over again? I think I don't want to say I've become numb to it, but it's almost like, where is it at this time? Who did it? And then there's some fear that goes into it for me, because I'm like, I can't imagine. there have been some incidents with women, but not as numerous as with black men. And I get nervous for them because I have a brother, I have friends who are black, obviously. And for me, just thinking about like how they navigate and how you all navigate in this world every day, and like not know that something as simple and simplistic as driving your vehicle could cause you to never have another breath on earth again. So I think I disheartened was how I felt. The pain and the weight of watching once again something happen, knowing that there's going to be footage that is going to be there for the world to see. So I think those were my initial thoughts and views as I learned about the incident and it's taking place. I think sometimes I blocked a little of it out because it is so much sometimes, but those were my initial reactions as Marlena the person. Like, come on now, again,
Yeah.
no. So
Yeah, and I can definitely side with you on blocking some of it out. It took me a while, honestly, to actually take time to either like watch the video or even listen to some of the broadcast recordings or just news uh, recordings on it, because once again, it hurts, and it's unfortunate. And then I think we're at a point also to where not only does it hurt, but you're getting frustrated in a sense.
Right.
There's some frustrations going on across the communities. Like, again, y'all. And I think that mixed with hurt, it just kind of elevates everyone's feelings. But Reverend John, I want to ask you the same question as well. Just personally, not even as pastor, but as person, how did it kind of make you feel?
I'm fatigued. I'm tired of it. As one from St. Louis, from Ferguson, who was there with Mike Brown, the trauma of it, and so I'm fatigued, but also I was, as many of us said, disturbed because I think we had been so used to at getting mad at white police officers that it was also the question was being asked of me, asking of myself, am I going to have the same fire that I would have based upon skin complexion of officers? Even though there were technically 6 officers, one being Caucasian, who was just fired as well from Memphis PD. That it is just to say that it was one of those things where it was like, okay, and I couldn't watch the whole film, the whole video. I wouldn't allow myself to have that trauma of continuing to watch black and brown men and women being brutalized on video. It's just not good for your own personal psyche. So it was like, here's another one.
Yeah, and all you guys have unique perspectives, but also we see a common thread, and we're all different, but um, just in this call on this episode tonight, I think we don't speak for everyone, but I think we kind of share a common sentiment of just frustration and fatigue of this is still going on, and it's really it is disheartening, Marlene, like you said, um, and I think one of the things that makes for me personally makes it even more difficult to deal with is that it came from people like us to us. If it's almost a conflict because when you see it, it might it should look like in a sense what we've seen other times, police misconduct against an unarmed male. This felt like, and for lack of better words, black on black. And I think that for me also kind of led to a lot of the frustrations um, and stuff because it's like y'all are us. I think we give our black officers a unique lens, and whether it's good or bad, it's unique part of the force, but still as a member of the community. So you still from the neighborhood, but you work here, and that can be, I believe, for some of us, unique and sometimes even conflicting to kind of see like where does this person stand. So I'm gonna go back with you. So from your work as an officer, 23 years, um, when you look at this from your professional standpoint, and just in this situation as an example, but just police misconduct in general, um, how have you been able to like navigate that over all these years, especially over the last 5 to 7 years of these really heinous and public um, incidents of misconduct? How did that kind of like affected you as a black police officer?
That's a loaded question, but I'll start with me being a black police officer. 23 years, I've been called everything from
Mm,
sellout, from anything but a child of God. Right? It's a thankless profession. Even more so when you're from the community, you police the community. As a matter of fact,
Mhm.
I lead a team in the same community that I grew up in. My mother still lives in the precinct that I serve, and so I have more ownership than most of the people I encounter. Um, and what's disheartening is the lack of accountability. And I'll start there with us as officers. We have to be accountable, but the citizens also have to be accountable as well. And so it is a mutual exchange that they have to be accountable and we have to be accountable. And so what I'm finding now when it comes to police misconduct is accountability. I think that we as a community um, need to hold our officials, our police officers accountable. And the more that happens, less incidents like Mr. Nichols occur. Accountability. Uh, our officers need to be trained. Our officers um, need to have proper knowledge of procedures, right? The process, the hiring process, right? You have training for 6 months, and then some departments have no training. And so the irony behind this is that I, for the majority of my career, serve in the same capacity as their now dysfunctional or defunct Scorpion unit. And so we handle um, gang activity, all gun related offenses, non fatal shootings, drugs, robberies. And that's the same thing they were doing in Memphis. And so for you to take officers and e- e- not to train them how to handle the procedure was wrong. I mean, from the moment they had to stop, and you're supposed to be experienced to be in a high profile unit like that, and I didn't see that experience, and unfortunately, and this is all Monday quarterbacks.
Right.
Oftentimes, we we put people in position by the way they look or carry themselves,
Mhm.
maybe their size and their stature instead of their ability and the potential and their temperament. And so, again, go back to what I'm tired of seeing. I- I'm seeing bad procedure because I know from the lens of a police officer. So before I see a white cop or a black cop, I see bad procedure, the lack of what we call verbal judo. I rarely have to put my hands on someone because I know how to talk and I know how to control with my words instead of my hands or my intermediate tools or weapons. Poor tactics. When they escorted him out of the vehicle, he should have been in handcuffs. He shouldn't even had an opportunity to run. Mr. Nichols de-escalated the situation or tried to, and the officers were the ones who were yelling and screaming. He said, "Hey, okay, okay, okay." That was what was eerie to me, was that there was no tactics, and I think the end didn't have to be if at the beginning that those officers were trained. And these are things that we do. And I'm gonna let you go, Brady. What I did, I had to watch it. Unlike Pastor Shaun, I couldn't turn away from it. I had to debrief my officers, and so we chopped and screwed it and watched each part of it and each aspect. There were you know egregious missteps between those officers, and it just saddened me. White, black, or green, it was just bad to be a police officer to wear a badge and to see that.
Can I say this? One, I have an officer at my church. We are talking to him yesterday, last week. I first mentioned about 2 weeks ago, and he was like, he said, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Like as a cop, he was like, there's no way in the world that it could get to that level. Like there's nobody that you want to just beat down to that level. But I want to say this, Ani, for you, want to commend you because I know many officers who don't feel comfortable serving in the community they grew up in, they live in now for fear of retribution, always, things happening. And so I want to commend you to my procedure as one who's working as a social activist in our community about making sure that our officers have right procedure, have right training.
Absolutely.
I think it's critical that as we talk about this situation to know that there are more good than bad.
Absolutely.
And that a lot of cops, white and black, who really are trying to do the best. And culture, I think, plays into a lot of it. I think my thing was this, I felt for the police chief, our sister, because you can see she was trying to address it right away. And I just think it's a political situation that's going on down there. That's no one's going to win. There's just no positive outcome. Well, I know there can be some through faith and through Christ and the community work, but it was just a lot that was going on. But I want to commend you and others who are in that field, because we give everybody, the blue line, blue wall, a bad name. And as a black cop, you're black and you're blue. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely.
I can't imagine the tension that goes on. Even with our sister Marlena, who's on the bench, got her robe, looking good, looking fly, representing. But in the same instance, people are probably like, "Give me a hookup. You broke the law. That ain't on me."
Absolutely.
I got a job to do in the same instance. So
absolutely, and it's more, and I appreciate that. I really think it's more so. I like to spend my time. You don't have to be from Detroit. You don't have to have my story, but you do have to be culturally aware. And you have to connect yourself to the community. And sometimes, we just assume he's black, he's from Detroit. No, we have people who are, from elsewhere. And this is a different culture, a different type of community that you have to police. And I think that's just important for you anywhere, for any profession. You have to adapt. And so it's disheartening to see that because you would see we would never experience that if everybody is culturally aware and culturally diverse, and that's what we're missing in a lot of these instances. I don't think they're always action of racism, but a lack of cultural awareness.
Yeah, we see.
I want to
go ahead, Brady. Sorry.
I was going to say I want to ask you just a kind of like a sidebar question, but it's to your point of how you address it. You are now working within the community that you grew up in. Why? What led you to make that decision? As far as like your decade worth of career choice to go back and not even go back, but to make the decision to, hey, I'm going to intentionally serve in my home community. Like, what kind of led to that decision for you?
Yeah, my mother, I believe it was my junior year in high school. She was carjacked in the same house she lives right now in our garage, going to church. And I remember statute of limitations over. I remember going to somebody and getting a gun, and I walked up and down the street looking for the guys that carjacked my mom. And as a teenager, I was a block away from where those guys were with my mother's car. Just a joyride, but they put a gun in her face and took her car on Sunday morning. And grace of God, I didn't find them. But I just remember how the police officer handled the situation with care, came over, showed compassion, and that the department found those guys. They were convicted, and it just made me have an appreciation and a light, coupled with the fact that my closest cousin, a few years before myself, he joined the force, and I got to see an up close view of it. And to couple with Shaun, said it was a calling. I don't think I had a choice. My full-time job in ministry, full-time job on a department, both are callings that my job and my life is to fulfill. So I know it's kind of sappy, but that's why I'm there now, is to get back.
Can we pause? Can y'all imagine Jelani as a junior walking up and down the Detroit street with a gun in his like? This is just throwing me off right now because
I was a church boy. I didn't know what I was doing.
He's singing. He played on the keys.
I was a church boy. That's probably why I didn't find him. Right?
We thank God for his covering, right? Because he would have been faced with them and looking like.
I just know this now. When I'm in Louisville in June,
I ain't built for jail.
Ain't about that life.
Not at all.
Marlena, if we can switch gears for a second, Marlena, oftentimes you see persons throughout the justice system, one as a previous DA, and then now or assistant DA, and now as on the bench, which again is so dope. We celebrate our Black Girl Magic that's going well here. Thank you so much. Can you share just from the other side of the criminal justice system? Because yes, police misconduct is one thing, but let's be honest. Sometimes there are folk who are guilty of the crime, and they also are around it. It's not always that we have bad police. And so, just from a criminal justice standpoint, what is your views, your thoughts? Because we have now seen recently that had not been before, officers being prosecuted. Not just charged, but actually being prosecuted and convicted, which is a major shift. And that we know that there are push by many in legislature to try to get rid of qualified immunity for police officers, where that if something happens, they can get sued, versus that the police department handles it through insurance and those kind of things. And there are many who will say now that you can do that, they may not do that. Just your thoughts overall in that aspect from that vantage point, if you would.
Well, I was fortunate because I came from an office that did prosecute police officers for misconduct in office. So there's a unit inside the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office that does that. So I would see it. Obviously, it didn't happen that often, but you would be amazed. A lot of the cases settled outside of court, but when there was an actual trial for a criminal prosecution, we all went to go see it because they took it very seriously that they were going to press charges against a police officer. So obviously I have a different perspective for police. Every time I see one of these incidents happen, I always say, well, let me get all the information first. So I'm an information seeker. I've had some similar, experiences with Jelani on the other side of, since majority of the community that sometimes gets prosecuted are African Americans. When they see me on the other side, there's either a sign of proudness, like I'll have the people like, "Oh, girl, go get it," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm against you on the other side," or I'll have the family making comments like, "Don't you think you're doing something?" So I got both sides of it when I was a prosecutor, but I always want to get all the information, right? I always seek to get as much as I can. So when I hear an incident, it come out, I want to say, well, let me see all the information first. Like I see what they're showing or I see what they're saying, but let me see what's going on because there may be justification. And that's probably a little bit from my background that I'm like, well, let me see what happened prior to this. Unlike the rest of you, I couldn't watch most of the video. As soon as I saw him getting kind of pulled out the vehicle, I was like, I went to the Jelani mode where I say, this is inappropriate conduct. This is like not procedurally how it goes. I've seen, I don't want to say hundreds, but I've seen a lot of traffic stops through video and lens, and none of them start off the way this started off. So I knew something was troubling from the very beginning because I was like, that is not how this goes. This is not procedure. Something else is going on here. So I knew it wasn't going to be a good situation. But I think the ability to grow up in the community. So I want to seek justice overall. I don't want to just put people, as they say, put them in jail. I don't put people in jail. I help orchestrate the process that got them there. But my job wasn't to necessarily see people get punished super bad or get, go to jail or go to prison. It was to seek justice. And that comes in many different forms. And I think that's why you need people who look like us in positions of power in places like police departments and places like prosecutors' offices. We can't all change things from the outside. Some of us have to be inside the system, working inside the system. And so we have to be able to be in there with our thought processes so that we could be able to execute some of these things that we see going on and call a spade a spade. When they have poor conduct, say that's poor conduct and you don't do it. But on the other side, when we do see that the officer followed all the procedures and this is how it ended up, can we stand behind them and say, you did what you were supposed to do that day? Because at the end of the day, I know a lot of it comes down to, them making sure they stay safe and they want to go home to their families as well. So if your conduct is in a certain way, then they want to make sure that they approach it in the correct way, but also that they remain safe themselves. So I hope that answered your question for
No, I think it does. I heard you say, don't just go by the reel, the TikTok that you see and assume you know the whole story.
Yeah.
There's always something before and after.
Right.
And even I'm gonna be honest, when I saw the video, part I said, this is personal. This ain't just
personal. Absolutely.
Yeah, this ain't you was running, he had a weapon, there was something that happened before. There was a call that said an individual looked like this, a black man, 6'2", and it's like every black man with a hoodie, it wasn't that. It's like, no, this is a beat down, this is a jump. This ain't, like you've been saying, procedure. This was not a traditional something happened and now we are investigating or concerned for our life aspect.
Right. I'm sorry to cut you off, but for somebody who's probably conducted hundreds of use of force investigations, the one thing that's synonymous is that use of force is never pretty. It's always ugly. It's always ugly. And so I try to teach, civilians that, like, if I have to use, or officers have to use force, it is never pretty, but it should be justified, right? And it should match the level of force that's needed to apprehend the suspect. And then when it doesn't, then it's a misuse of power. It is excessive, and it needs to be corrected. It needs to be exposed, right? And so oversight is big. I mean, I don't know what it is in Memphis, but I mean, we got not only the officer chief investigator, but internal affairs. But before it gets that far, I think the persons that should have been making the oversight were one of the five, or somebody in there. 5 people can't make that mistake, and that's the problem. So before we say their supervisor wasn't present, it was their responsibility to self-police each other. Somebody should say, hey, we're doing too much. It's not worth it. Slow down, right? And it was already predetermined that the outcome was going to be that he was going to be assaulted. And that's what happened. He was assaulted. And I'm not speculating, but it almost looked choreographed. And I guess for the sake of, the Sky Cop video that they had, if it wasn't for that, it's hard to decipher with body cameras. And unfortunately, it may even been manipulated. Who knows? But it should never even have any question about it, because someone, and that's what I'm big on. That's my buzzword is accountability. One of the 4 of them, one of the 5 of them should say, yo, this is going too far. Let's stop,
How often does that happen? Because I hear from officers, or we hear the idea that sometimes it's difficult to be the voice of reason in a situation, because again, this is my partner and I want to make sure that when my life is on the line, I can trust that he or she will have my back. There's a culture there, within PDs. Now, of course, you all in Michigan, you all have your governor and others who seem to get it, be woke in those aspects there. There are folks, I'm in New York, so New York is a whole different monster, but still that accountability that needs to precede ideas there. But we got persons who are watching, who are in the South, who are in the Midwest, who there's a different culture, or the West Coast, about policing. And so can you speak to, if you can, how that flows? Yeah.
Our former chief and Marlena, they used to call him Hollywood, James Craig, he just retired. Yes. And coupled with accountability was transparency. We had an incident here. Was an officer involved shooting. It was a fatal shooting, and it was right after George Floyd. We were actually just finishing up a long stretch of protests that were mostly peaceful, and this individual was being apprehended, and one of his friends were right by. He pointed and shot right at the officer's head, and he was we used force, and he was shot and fatally wounded. The narrative, the first thing that the media said is that he was at the store, he ran, and he was executed on his knees by the police. So, the activists activated, and they were on the way, and our chief immediately downloaded all of the video, got the analysts together, put a PowerPoint together in probably less than an hour, and put it on national TV. Like, this is what happened, full transparency. And we had no incidents. The protest didn't happen. And that's because we stand by the fact that, as Judge Taylor says, they're gonna prosecute. Our prosecutor believes in accountability as well. And if that is synonymous across the nation, these incidents will happen less and less. And also, to speak to what the other part of your question is, I teach my guys, do what your career can handle. All right. And so if you're working with somebody who has a lower moral compass and ethic than you, just shame on you. Right. If I know that every time my partner runs and chases somebody, the guy come back bleeding, or he's complaining of a cracked rib or his eyes swollen, I can't just turn a blind eye to that, because I am going to be affected by that. We're partners. So I tell guys all the time, do what your career can handle. And I'm not going to jail for anybody. I'll take a bullet for you, but I'm not going to jail for you.
That's real. That's real.
And that's definitely something that you can kind of sense in this situation, was that it went from professional to personal. And I mean, this acknowledging people as people, that's all well and good, but it felt like in this situation that really they didn't even start off as professional, other than just some of the very initial turn on the lights routine things. It wasn't like some of their expressions in the situation. It felt like just a couple of guys jumping somebody down the street. But in this situation, in the professional setting, they were 5 officers, and this was just supposed to be a routine traffic stop. Really, kind of wondering what the traffic stop was about. Like, what did he actually do in violation of that?
Right. And why you needed 5 officers for a traffic stop that was just routine.
Right. And I guess in the police world, nothing is routine, but
yeah,
they use deadly force for a traffic infraction.
Right.
And that's it. Whenever I take a baton and strike, anybody in the head, that's deadly force. When I kick someone in their head, that's considered deadly force. And so, if I had to sum it all up, they use deadly force for something that was a ticketable offense.
And I want to go back to, if I can, definitely what you said about not doing anything that your career can't handle. Like that phrase was major for me, because the statement means it's a career, it's a life, it's a livelihood, money.
Absolutely.
And so the accountability you talked about, I think, is critical. What I think I'm concerned about is the fact that, and I've seen this before, being in St. Louis, Missouri, being in Richmond, Virginia, and now being in New York, is the fact that I know of bad cops who will get let go of a department because of their poor behavior. But then, because there is no national database, there is no real to say, why'd you leave, and the marks aren't on your record and follow you, they then get hired by other PDs.
Yeah.
They're able to kind of have this same behavior all over again. And the accountability doesn't follow you in terms of saying, this is your record, and so I've seen that before. Not saying that for you guys and, where you all are, but it is to be concerning with that. I'm getting some inside information from some folk in Memphis saying that the police chief, she was a She ran the Red Dog unit in Atlanta. And when she moved to Memphis, one of the first things she did was created the Scorpion unit.
Yeah.
That was going on. And so kind of used it. And so, um, I'm not speaking ill of her. I'm not saying that she shut it down to kind of cover herself. One moment I know the scrutiny that she was under. I can't say I know experience for myself, but I can only imagine. But just in terms of just how do we change this culture? The culture doesn't happen in your department, Johnny, or with your guys, Marlena, within the office that you used to serve in. You would prosecute. It was known we don't play here. But how do we change this culture for other PDs, other cities, other places? How does that happen? Because you got activists on one side, you got angry family members in person, then you got church folk, and then you got law enforcement, white and black.
I believe there's only one way you can fix it, and that's serve the community in a holistic approach.
Okay.
So I would not be who I am now if I wasn't also a mentor, if I also wasn't a teacher, if I wasn't an encourager, right? I could speak for Judge Taylor. I mean, I've watched her in the courtroom teach, not just issue fines or I mean, it has to be the culture has to be, everybody has to buy into a culture where everybody is productive and everybody participates. So the church's stance has to be the same as the police chiefs and the same as, the activists. I mean, we all have to be engaged in making a better community. And when you come from somewhere else to come be a part and serve this community, the first thing you need to do is know the people in the community, know the culture, right? And know the environment that you're coming to, and how can you better serve, not how much money I can make or how fast can I climb up the ranks, but what can I do to serve the community. That's why I sit on the panels for the department for our hiring process. You have to come see me, and I make sure that that it's not about how you feel or what you want, but can you be the best asset for the community, for the city of Detroit? And that's what we need. It has to connect. And if it doesn't, the broken system that we see in Memphis, that's what happens.
Yeah, and I appreciate your comment, kind of addressing that. And Marlene, I kind of want to get your part of that as well, from uh, from a judicial standpoint. What are some of the ways that that the community, or from your side, can work to either lessen or help address some of these situations that we have going on?
Well, as one of the rules for a 36th district court in the city is that I have to live in the
We talked
community.
about it earlier, how on compared.
Go ahead, Marlena.
Okay. All right. I'm a Detroit resident. So one of the things that I have to do is I have to live in the city. So this is my community. So I care about it. But one of the things we do is we address different parts of the community. I actually sit as a judge for this program called Street Court Detroit. And it addresses homelessness, as well as erasing traffic offenses that may prevent them from being able to get a license so that they can be able to go to work, so that they can be able to apply for jobs, so they can do all of these things. So I make myself accessible to the community. And when I go do these hearings where I know that the person is going to get all of their tickets forgiven, I make sure that I read over why they're being forgiven. I make myself human. And I think that's one of the things, now that I know Sergeant Jones watches me, but I try to really connect with the people on the screen. Like, everybody is suffering from issues, right? So I'm not exempt. They're not exempt when they're on the screen. So I really take each person individually. I know these are just, I do traffic court. So if people don't know that, and I do misdemeanors in the city of Detroit. So it's not the end of the world. But for some people, like, they've gotten themselves, They don't know what happened. They allowed their cousin to drive a car who was just trying to help them, and now they ain't realized that they didn't have a license, or they knew that they didn't have a license, but they didn't think they were going to get caught. And all of a sudden, they're before me trying to clear up some stuff and get themselves back on track. Sometimes just having a little compassion, listening to the person's story and saying, you know what, I'm going to waive your costs and fines, brings on a whole onset of emotions. And so it's being empathetic to people and where they are. I think sometimes people just, you can't go after things just because you want to get paid. That's not just the only thing in life. It has to be some real value and worth in what you do, and it'll show through. I like the community to know that, I'm not just here to punish you. I'm here to hold you accountable, but also to make sure that that we want to see you succeed and we want to see you be successful. How can we help you do that? Because and that's how we just do it throughout everything that we do. I'm making myself accessible to the community so that they know, like, hey, I'm just like you. I have issues and I have things going on, but we have to learn how to get through them and kind of go through them. So I think really making sure that we know the community and that we're willing to engage with them in a way that makes them feel heard and makes them feel like they want to come resolve issues that come before the court.
Great, great. No, I think that's really cool. The role of the community, seeing people as a human and not as just a color or just a name or a number. Question for you all is this: how has your faith impacted you in your role in law enforcement and judicial aspects, and also how do you think our faith can make a difference so these situations don't continue to happen? Because I tell our village chief of police the other week, I said, you think it won't happen in Austin, but every community didn't think they would be their name next.
Absolutely.
Nobody thinks it's going to be their town, their city, small or large. But it's not until it happens. So question is, how does your faith impact you, and how do you think how can our faith, those who are watching, make a difference in these situations?
My moral compass and my faith guides me when I work, when I lead, when I serve. Simple. I mean, I have to my character and my integrity. Can I don't waver in that. My faith in God is that I know I'm an ambassador, and that I am oftentimes I don't have a conflict when it comes to what's right and what's wrong when it comes to policing, right? And so that's where I am. That's an interesting question about what the church can do, and maybe some leader of city or official will watch this, will see what has been done in Detroit. Is that I believe the church needs to be proactive. Church has been reactive when it comes to this issue of police misconduct and even violence in the communities, right? We'll acknowledge that we're violent, but what I love about the city of Detroit and the accountability that comes into play is that we've always had pastors, even prominent pastors, who serve on a police commissioner, as police commissioners, who have oversight over the department, right? Making decisions about the department, keeping a thumb on things that need to be regulated. We have one of the largest chaplain corps, and not just pastors, people of all denominations, all faiths. That's for accountability. They know the streets. They are in the hospitals. They are at the shooting scenes. And so that same compassion can go back to their congregation and activate their churches and their communities to be proactive in here. So why only have a peace walk after the child is how can let's get active and say, hey, Sergeant Jones, what can I do to help your mentoring program? We have a program here that I give leadership to for the city of Detroit. One of the leaders, the Brotherhood program. And so we've reached in the last 6 years, we've reached thousands of kids. We teach in the high schools. We have summits and teach them core values. You need to be proactive. The church needs to be proactive. And just like my unit does proactive policing, you have to be proactive and get outside. Oh, look at that. Outside of the walls of the church. That's the Holy Spirit, right? Outside the walls of the church and begin activating the community that you serve. So it's, like I said, it's a holistic approach.
So then what do you say, Marlena or Jelani, to those persons who their pastor, male or female minister, but rabbi, but it might be, that says, I don't want to bring politics into the pulpit. I want to just preach the word of God. I just want to save souls. What do you say to those when you see the other side of life and what might be needed?
I say that that's the church is where we started our movement to become recognized as equals, right? And we're still striving to get there, but the church was the very foundation of how we got things done in our community. So how dare we try to now I don't want you to violate your nonprofit, okay? Because we know that we got to keep
Never
we can
that.
only say so much, even though we taught, we taught that line, teeter that line. But I think that it's important that we make sure that the community and our parishioners know that we support their endeavors and that we want them to have good, full lives. But that means that we have to remain active and we have to stay engaged. And so, someone who doesn't want to make a stance for stuff, and like you said, do the proactive instead of the reactive things that come with it, that's just unrealistic to me. Like, we have to be the foundation. Like, we are what they see, right? The thing is to lead more people to Christ through all that we do. And if they go into the community and you're a whole nother person, or you don't want to support them and what's going on, then they're going to be like, well, you're not meeting my basic needs, my basic human needs, to be treated fairly, to go through life not having to fear for certain things. And as a church, we got to meet their basic needs, right? You can't talk to someone who's hungry and their stomach is growling. They're not going to listen to you. You also can't tell this person you're safe in this community and you're not willing to go out there and make sure that community is safe. So I would say stand up for it. You'll be surprised at how much support you get from the community if you're willing to say and take a stance and say, hey, no, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to lead. And you're going to follow. You're going to get followers because they want that type of commitment from leadership to say, no, this is wrong. This isn't right. And this is not how people should be treated. So I think it's very, very important for us to do that.
And I definitely see the church as a good kind of multifaceted system. We get that the church to be a support system to the community. We need prayer for Tyre Nichols and his family and all the members of that community there have been traumatized by this incident. We also have the church that can stand up and be in strong, strong support for definitely any needed reform or help for our institutions that have been failing. So we get the opportunity to, as a church body, to stand in multiple places. We stand with the people and dealing with the trauma of the situation. We get to stand now for reconciliation efforts between the community and the police force. So the church can be so many different things. We need to just think outside of the four walls of it and really see where we can function at and where we're most needed at, and understand that that the church can be a collection. Community churches. One church might serve as the ones who really offer the therapeutic services for the trauma that the community has experienced. One church can be the one, hey, we're going to go to City Hall. We're going to stand and try to see what help we can do to offer changes so misconduct like this doesn't happen in the future. We all can do collective. We don't all have to do the same thing, but we all can do something. Now, that's the beauty of the church. As a body, my arm has two of them. Right hand can do this, left hand can do that. And I think that's the opportunity that we have as a church body to really holistically help out in all of these situations that just seem to routinely occur.
And Brady, I think that's real cool because as a pastor, I hear other clergy say, "Well, I'm not an activist pastor. That's not my lane." But like you said, everybody can play different roles, whether it is sending your men to be part of Jelani or other communities, mentorship program, My Brother's Keeper. You are reading in schools. You are providing that service community, as you said, of counseling or care. Some churches are just ones where you can use my building for whatever program that you're doing and using. We don't have the people for that, but we've got the space for that. And so I think it is like you're saying, Brady, everybody else, finding different ways to be community minded. Jesus did not stay in the temple the whole time. He was among the people and knew what the people needed, what they were going on, and knowing your political leaders, knowing your chief of police, whether you're serving as a chaplain, I've been trying to be a chaplain for my PD for a couple of years. My chief of police, he don't really like me sometimes because I hold him accountable, Jelani. So first I was like, yeah. So hopefully he's not watching. Hey, Kevin Sylvester, God bless you. But in the same instance, it is the idea of saying having clergy who are part of it, because I know clergy who their calling is chaplaincy for law enforcement, because the things that you all see, you all deal with, that's why there's such a high rate of alcoholism and abuse, even among police families and persons, because you see the worst ills in society, and you got to figure out how do you deal with that and not let it come home with you and affect you as well. Yes, and so I think how clergy do it all different kind of ways, like you said, Brady, but it is saying, and so I want to encourage those who are watching, young adults, iRockers, ask your pastor, ask your church, what do you want?
Yeah, what he said.
We want to be proactively engaged in making the change.
Yes, sir.
Well, you guys, we're gonna look to wrap this up, but it's been a great conversation, so we can keep on talking all night. But Jelani and Marlena, I want to get just your final thoughts and comments on this situation, and just your final expressions of how you feel about how everything has been going on as of late.
Change begins with us. All right, we have to stand up. Your opinions matter, right? But we need to use our moral compass and turn it into our voice, right? And change the community, change our churches, right? Change, it begins with us. So I want to say maybe we need to change and go back to where it used to be, where we had AA meetings in the church and we had things for rehabilitation, jail ministry, right? Let's reconnect with the things that worked in the past and see if we can, re-engage and reinvigorate those things, because it's needed to help the community. I can lock up 1 million of us. It won't change a thing if you don't change the heart and the mind of these young people. And the truth of the matter is, the dangerous part of it is 50% of our violent crimes are juvenile crimes. 50% in the city of Detroit. That's dangerous. That's our children who should be on somebody's usher board in the choir stand, right? The church, we need to do better.
Well, that's because parents say, "I let my kid decide what they want to do," instead of just having them come to church like they should.
That's right.
But
AAU on Sunday. Everybody playing basketball, football, everything. I digress. God bless you all.
But I agree. I think one of the things that we have to realize is it's not as bad as it seems. Okay, for all the negative, all the bad, and it's really, really bad when we see it. There is so much good going on. And if we all take responsibility to try and change one person's life at a time, and it doesn't have to be a major change. It could just be as kind, like I said, sometimes just telling a person, no, we're going, let's talk to someone before you make that type of decision. If we just take time to see individuals as individuals and treat them as such and show some compassion and some kindness, I think that goes a lot further than you would think. So I think we really need to focus on the good. It's a lot of bad, but there's so much good too. And so we really need to remind ourselves of that for every bad cop or misconduct that you see, there's a whole force of people who are doing what's right and protecting all of us in the community from the hurt, harm, and danger that may come to us. So we only get to see the negative, but know that there is so much good going on in the background. And that's why we have to be supportive and really weed out what's wrong and what's right. So that's my nugget.
Well, Shaun, I'm gonna let you with the final one. As pastor, what are your kind of final thoughts with this situation?
I think they've already been said that the church has to be visible. We don't need pastors to be protest pastors who just show up for cameras and for photo ops. We need pastors who are in the streets, who know what's going on, and who are encouraging members and community to be a part of it. So it's a partnership. There are no superstars, but if we all do our part and encourage, we'll make a difference. It can be better. It will be better. And let's not just wait to the last minute. Let's be there. Let's not show up to the funeral. Funerals are great. Well, they're not great, but providing services are great. What it is say, what do you do after, and what do you do before? If you're last minute, that's okay. Don't just fall by the wayside afterwards, but be a part of it, so you can be part of the change that's needed for our community. And pray for folk, because this is really traumatic. People are now continually fearful for their lives. And so as pastors, we got to also provide a hope through the word of God, through scripture, through prayer, and to be a place where people can have conversation. Even if you just host a conversation between your local police department and your members for dialogue. We don't talk. We talk we yell at, we drive by, but we don't talk to. Mm-hmm. So if you get to know Master Sergeant Jelani Jones, you'll see he's a good guy. You'll learn that. So when you see him in uniform and he knows you in uniform, he knows you when he's in uniform, it can make a whole world of a difference in how the conversation goes, the approach goes, because relationships already been built versus I just see you for the first time and I don't know what's really going on both sides.
Yeah, and I would just end it with everyone who's tuning in or watching this even later on a rewatch, be in prayer. Let's just be in prayer collectively for the family of Tyre Nichols and other victims of these incidents in the past, and also let's be in prayer for the officers. We gotta pray for Saul the same way we pray for Paul, because people may have bad times in their life, bad moments, but God can take care of any of those negative situations in His own way. So we need to be in prayer for those men as well, as they handle the situation in their own way. Justice is justice, but justice is Lord's. So all we can do is sit and pray for everybody that's been involved, and pray for the community of Memphis and everyone else that has been traumatized or victimized in any way by sins similar to this, or there's anything else going on. I think we're starting off the year, and it seems so similar to everything else. But God is good, y'all. God is good, and we know that that for all the trauma, all the negative publicity that the situation will get, that He is still in control. So iRock fam, thank you guys for joining all of us. I want to give a personal thank you to Jelani and Marlena. Glad you guys were able to join us, and thank y'all. Y'all smart. I like it. Y'all know what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about. Man, some of y'all nuggets was like, y'all actually do this for real. Y'all get paid for this. So
by the city and state of Michigan. God bless them both. Thank you.
Exactly. But once again, thank you guys for hopping on, and then thank you all who are able to watch live, or you guys are going to watch later on. Like, share, and subscribe to the iRock Facebook and YouTube pages. Once again, I am Brother Brady, joined by Marlena Taylor, Jelani Jones, and the pastor, leader, the one and only Shaun Jones. Thank you guys, and peace.